Hi friends. In today's video we are going to get into the topic of understanding the furthermore terminologies which are required for us in order to understand the capabilities of warehouse management in Dynamics 365 finance and operation. So in the episode 2 we actually saw the details about some of the basic terminologies like load, wave, shipment. So those are the terminologies which are actually required for you to understand some of the processes available in warehouse management. So that's what we saw. We saw about release to warehouse, shipment, load, work, and all. Right now, we will continue with our terminologies session. This is part two, where we will be covering some of the other important terminologies which are related to warehouse management module. Right. So for the purpose of this episode 3, I just created a presentation. So I'll get quickly get into the presentation. So so in this episode, we will continue with the key terminologies part 2, where we will be covering the terminologies which include storage dimensions, reservation hierarchy, and unit sequence group. So storage dimensions are very important in terms of how you are going to define the storage hierarchy, site, warehouse, location, license plate, and inventory status. In the previous episode, we saw what exactly a license plate is, how it can be used, but we will also see how to configure these in the storage dimension, and then followed by we will also see what exactly a reservation hierarchy is, and also we will get into what exactly unit sequence group is also. Right. So watch this video until then, otherwise you will miss some of the important concept as we progress in this warehouse management series. So let's talk about storage dimension group. So let's not talk purely from the presentation perspective, because otherwise it would be boring for you. So we will try to shuttle around between the system and the presentation. So talking about the storage dimension group, first of all, if you want to create a new storage dimension group, now you need to navigate to um, product information management, and then under setup, if you see, there is a section called dimension variant groups. So generally in D365 you can create three different types of inventory dimension groups, which are product dimension, storage dimension, and tracking dimension. Product dimension defines the character of the product, whether it's style, type, color, size. So character is basically defined by the product dimension. Storage dimension basically defines how you will be storing, or where you will be storing the product in a warehouse or site. So that's what is basically defined under storage dimension. And tracking dimension helps you to track the inventory using the batch, serial control, or using the ownership. So for this video we will be focusing on storage dimension group. So generally for the storage dimension group, you can see that it basically contains the five dimensions on a site, warehouse, location, inventory status, and license plate. Site is at a very larger level. Let's say you have a site in um, maybe in India. One site is located in Chennai, another one is in Bangalore, another one is in maybe in Hyderabad or whatever it is. So sites are at a very higher level, which is a geographical location, basically where you have your warehouse facility. And in one site you can have multiple warehouses. Some can be virtual warehouses, or you have a specific warehouse zones, dedicated warehouses inside the specific site, where you can store your material. And within the warehouse you can have multiple locations, which can be bin locations or pallet locations, specific to any of the racking system which you have. And in those locations you can make the items inventory status as available or not available. And license plate, like we discussed, is basically using the concept of palletization. So if you have missed episode number 2, please do watch the same and then come back to this episode number 3. So in case of this is a default configuration which is already available in the system. So if I get into WMS enabled, so you can see that all the dimensions are active in case of WMS enabled warehouses. So for us to use the warehouse management processes, we need to when you make sure that all the dimensions are active. For example, let's try to create a new task storage dimension group. Let me name it as um, WMS WMS is already there, so I'll just name it as WHS. So WHS test group. So once I click on save, you can see the site and warehouses, or all the dimensions are populated. And now here you can see that site and warehouse or by default is active always, and you will not be able to disable these two. So which means if you create a storage dimension group, always the site and warehouse are active, and you will not be able to disable it. And if you want, you can enable or disable physical inventory or financial inventory. Blank receipt is whenever you receive the material, the dimension warehouse, if this is enabled, then the warehouse is not required to provide a complete your product receipt. Or in the case of issue transactions like your transfer orders or your sales orders, wherever the material is getting issued, if warehouse is enabled, then without providing the warehouse, you will be able to complete the issue transaction. So blank issue allowed, blank receipt allowed. Then if you want to track your physical inventory, then those dimensions has to be enabled. So site, we are now tracking site as a physical inventory. Financial inventory in the sense, then the cost will be included at based on the dimensions in which financial inventory is actually enabled. So coverage, basically this plan, the coverage plan can be done based on the dimensions which are active in the storage dimensions, based on which you can, whenever you run the master planning, user will be able to do the coverage based on the dimensions which are enabled over here. And whenever you write a trade agreement for purchase or for sales, you can, if you want to include the dimensions, site, warehouse and location, then you have to make sure that this is enabled. So we also made a video regarding a trade agreement. If not, please do check out the same. But the thing which we need to note here is there is an option over here called use warehouse management processes. This has to be enabled for the storage dimension. This storage dimension then will be attached to the item which, in which we will be following the advanced warehouse processes. So the moment you enable the use warehouse management processes and hit the save button, all these dimensions will become active. Now hit the save button, like you see here, all these dimensions become active. And at the same time, you can also see here blank receipt is automatically enabled for license plate. So without providing the license plate, you will be still able to proceed for completing the product receipt or completing the sales order uh, packing slip process. So license plate is not mandatory. And at the same time, if you want to enable or disable any of the other dimensions, you can do that. But once you enable use warehouse management parameter, also you can see the primary stocking is enabled. So this actually defines the primary dimensions which are required for the item, and these dimensions will be available whenever you go to the on hand screen also, right? So this is how storage dimension is. Now this storage dimension need to be assigned to the item which we will be creating in our next episode. So now let's go back to the presentation. And as part of our presentation, so next topic which are supposed to see is the reservation hierarchy. But for reservation hierarchy, what I want you guys to do is, I already published a document regarding the reservation hierarchy, and in which I just mentioned the detailed step-by-step processes which are involved, why reservation hierarchies are important, and how we can control the reservations at the sales orders for the advanced warehouse management controlled items, how we can create the reservation hierarchy, and what are all the dimensions which need to be above location, why it has to be above location. All these I have provided a step by step guide. I just recommend you to go through this, because it should be a two-way communication. I can tell you in a video, but I just wish you should walk through these document and then get a hands-on experience, and that way you will learn much better. So in this I have also mentioned how we can do the reservation in a sales order, and after reserving, what how we need to capture the quantity, and how the lot need to be reserved. All these details I have captured over here. So my humble request is you should please go through this manual which is available in my LinkedIn profile, and then based on this you can completely understand what a reservation hierarchy it is. Because this itself, it's a huge topic, it requires a lot of time to discuss in a video. But I humbly request you to go through this manual and then get an idea about the reservation hierarchy, right? But the today's most important topic is unit sequence group. What is exactly a unit sequence group? The unit sequence group defines the sequence of units that can be used in the warehouse operations. Let's quickly get into the unit sequence group. So this is storage dimension for you. In order to set up the unit sequence group, go to warehouse management, set up. Under warehouse, you have unit sequence groups. So unit sequence groups define the sequence of units. Let me tell you, sequence of units that can be used in a warehouse operations. Let's take this example. Let's say I have one unit of iPhone with me, one box. This is just a one quantity of iPhone in what I can say is a phone box, right? This is a each one each, and I can have 10 eaches in this box. Yeah, so whenever I complete my manufacturing, I know that it is going to come in eaches, and I will pack it in boxes. This box will contain 10 eaches, and I am going to put it in pallet. I am this pallet I can have 10 boxes, so which means I can each pallet will contain 100 quantities of iPhones. So the smallest unit is each, next is box, and the next largest unit is pallet. So whenever you do a unit sequence group, you need to start off with the smallest unit each, and then slowly you need to progress towards the largest unit. So why we do this, why we need to track a unit sequence group? That's what, because the question here is the sequence determines the order of units in which warehouse work is generated. So whenever you do a cycle count, whether you want to count it at each level, or you want to count it at box level, or you want to count it at pallet level. Let's say I have 10 pallets, which means I have 1,000 quantities of iPhones. Or if you want to count it at the box level, so that the warehouse worker comes to the warehouse and counts the each and every box, how many boxes are available, instead of going to each and every unit, because that is quite time consuming. Or do you want the workers to count the number of pallets? So you can define it based on the unit sequence group. Also, the most important point is the smallest unit in the sequence group that you associate with an item must match the inventory unit. So the inventory unit should be each. In this case, let's say if we are creating an item called iPhone in our system, the smallest unit for that is, for us, for that iPhone is each. So the inventory unit should be each in that case. So this is why we use a unit sequence group. So let's get into the system now. So let's say we already have a unit sequence group for each box and pallet. So let me delete this for a moment. I'm not sure whether this is already assigned to any item. So this is not assigned to any item, that's why we are able to delete that. So let's say I'm creating a unit sequence group each box and pallet, each box and pallet. Okay, so in this case, like I said, we need to start off with the lowest inventory unit, which is eaches for us. So each EA, then I'll add in one more line, then it will be box, then I'll add one more line. I can see the line number is increasing, so I we need to start off with the lowest unit now, and then I'll add pallets. Yes. Now question is, what are the other fields which are available over here in the unit sequence group? So license plate packing type. This is basically an ID. You can type the ID over here. Let's say if I type the ID as A, it says accepts number only. So I cannot use the alphabets. Type as 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is the license plate packing ID that will be added to our license plate number. You can see on the help text that clearly says added to the license plate number. So you can identify the identify the unit based on the same. So first I will hit the save button. Yeah, it's getting saved. And the next important topic over here is license plate grouping. This is a very important concept, which you guys need to understand. I'll just get into this slowly so that you can clearly understand this particular concept, because in as far as unit sequence group is concerned, this is the most important functionality. What is license plate grouping? License plate grouping, like it has been mentioned over here in the help text, is if you want quantities of items that are larger than a pallet to be grouped into a single license plate for the receipt. Which I know it sounds confusing, but let me try to explain it. So, for example, I'm just enabling this for license eaches and boxes. So, whenever I receive the quantity in the pallets, or whenever I receive it from vendor, or I'm going to ship it to a customer, the group when the license plate ID is created, it will try to group it based on eaches or boxes, and not in terms of pallet. Still it might be confusing, so that's why I created a slide. Let's say we are receiving 100 quantity in our warehouse today. Okay, so when we are going to using a mobile device, when we are going to complete the receiving process, in which the license grouping is enabled for eaches, boxes, but it is disabled for pallet. Okay, so in those cases, for receiving 100 quantity, like I said, this pallet can contain 100 quantity, right? So for this one pallet, one license plate will be created, right? But in the next case, let's say I am receiving 105 quantity instead of 100 quantity, I'm receiving 105 quantity, and I have enabled yes for eaches, no for box, and no for pallet. Then in that case, it clearly says for 100 quantity, for the 100 quantity which is possible storage for me in one pallet, one license plate is created. And for the remaining 5 quantity, it is actually grouping the remaining 5 quantity and creates a license plate for the remaining 5 quantity. You got it? So the grouping logic, that's how it works. So since we have enabled grouping for eaches, so it has grouped the remaining 5 quantity and created a license plate for the same. So the remaining 5 quantity or can be tracked using that one license plate. Let's take this complex scenario. Let's say I am receiving 125 quantity, but what I did this time, I have enabled a license plate grouping for eaches, for boxes, and not for pallet. So in this case, one license plate will be created for the pallet of 100 quantity, and we have remaining 25 quantity, right? Which means we should have two boxes. Each box contain 10 quantity, and then we have five individual pieces of iPhone. So for the two boxes, one license plate is created, since we have enabled license plate grouping for boxes. So if we would have added remaining four boxes or five boxes, still a license, one single license plate would have been created. But for example, if I would have made this box as no, then one license, then two license plate would have been created for two boxes. Since I have kept it as yes, the license plate grouping as yes, then for two boxes only one license plate will be created. So this concept is very important as far as unit sequence group is concerned. So let's get back to the system. So license plate grouping, that's how this license plate grouping will help you to group the items based on the unit, and then store it in your system, in your warehouse, sorry. And you can also use the unit for cycle counting. Let's say if I am going to enable this for pallet and then or boxes, then at pallet level and box level I will be able to complete the cycle counting, so that when I do a quick counting of the stock, then I will quickly count, the work will be created for counting the boxes and the pallets, and not the eaches. If you want to go deeper level of counting at each level, then you need to enable at the eaches also. And then we have the default unit for purchasers. Let's say if I enable the palette, then whenever I go for purchasing the material, it will be purchased in the quantities of 100. In the quantities of 100, whenever we do the transfer, it will be transferred in the quantities of 100. So that will be the default unit for purchase and transfer. Then we have default unit for production. When I supply it to production, let's say I want to supply it in terms of boxes, not in terms of pallet. So then I need to enable boxes. Then we have default unit for material consumption. So this is the general which any user can enable or disable based on the configurations. And default container type is basically used for packaging the materials. So probably when we look at the concept of containerization, we will get into this particular topic, but not right now, because based on which the packing of the the finished goods will be done, whether you want to do the packing at the each level or box level. So default container type is the setup which is required for the same, right? So what I would suggest here is the license plate grouping is the important concept as far as unit sequence groups are concerned. And always remember, you should go from the lowest unit to the highest unit, and this is how we will be able to control the how the inventory tracking and packaging will be done in your warehouses. At inventory unit will be each level or box level or pallet level, right? So these are the important topics which we covered today. The storage dimension group, and then I like I said, please go through the document of user manual of reservation hierarchy, which will be highly helpful. And then unit sequence group. I hope you had a good idea about the unit sequence group and also the license plate grouping logic. And followed by next, we'll be quickly getting into the episode number 4, where we'll be getting into the configuration of the item. And then we'll be getting into the part 2 session of episode 5 it is. So we will be furthermore getting deep diving into the configuration of warehouses, and furthermore locations and location profiles, locations and zones. So that's what we'll be covering in the part 2. So if you want to get regular updates, please do follow my profile in LinkedIn, or if you are in YouTube, follow my channel Sriram Sivashankaran D35 Talks. See you soon in episode number 4. Thank you.